So one thing that I will admit is sometimes when you in the realm of like trying to scale to get outside of your job, you forget the most important thing that got you there, and that was your job.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, that's what it was, bro. So a lot of times, like when I'm getting these properties, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm on socials, I kind of got distracted and kind of just got so consumed with, rentals and doing this and doing that that it actually affected like my job performance. Like I wasn't as focused, I wasn't as locked in.
Welcome to House Rich, the real estate show where we help millennials figure out where do I get started in real estate and how to build generational wealth. Today we have a special guest, Tramaine Robinson, the 9-to-5 landlord. We're going to be talking about how to build and manage your portfolio while you have a 9-to-5. Because I think a lot of times we see on the gram or the TikTok, wherever you're at, folks that at least claim to have like 20, 30, 40 units and be financially free. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where folks are thinking about how do I get in the game, but are never actually pulling the trigger, right? So we're going to talk about someone that's on that journey to get financially free, has a 9-to-5, like most people do when they own rental properties, believe it or not, and how he manages those properties. And yeah, so we'll get into a little bit of that. So appreciate you being on the show. Anything I missed as far as your introduction you would like to add?
No, I mean, not really. Like as you said, I'm Tremaine, aka the 9-to-5 landlord. I'm an accountant by day, landlord at night.
Right.
Between me and my lady, we have 8 units, which consist of two triplexes and a duplex. And I also have a course called 9-to-5 Landlord, where I go over how to be a landlord while working a demanding job.
Oh, okay, Roger that. Thank you. So let's jump right into that. And so I know in kind of the pregame we're talking about, you and your lady are not actually married yet. And so did you consciously like purchase properties like separately in order to kind of build your portfolio before getting married, or
Yes.
that just kind of naturally unfold? You kind of talk about that thought process?
No, yes, no, it definitely was subconsciously like we need to try to get property before we get married, because I feel like my take on what marriage is, what everybody else is, might not be the same. I feel like it's a business. Of course, you like the person you with, but I didn't want to enter no kind of long-term agreement without no assets, man. So my whole thing was before we officially, which we still haven't, but we will soon, officially, make this official partnership. Let's build these assets up. So, push come to shove, you got yours, I got mine.
Mhm.
We still straight. We're going into it with something than just, debt from a big wedding. So that was kind of how I was looking at it.
Gotcha. So whose idea was it to start building the portfolio, or were you guys just on the same wave?
Well, it started, it was for me, but how it all started is, so I work as an accountant for my 9-to-5. So during tax season, I do a lot of tax returns for a lot of different people.
All right.
So I happen to be doing this one tax return in particular, and the guy made like $12,000 from his W-2 job. He had like $50 in interest and dividends, and doing the tax return, I'm like, why is he a client of ours? Because we charge top dollar, and this was kind of like a simple return.
Uh-huh.
And then I got to what's called the Schedule E, which is where you put all your real estate holdings.
All right.
And the guy made like $195,000. And when I seen that, I'm like, whoa, because when I seen the paperwork on those properties, they were all areas I had drove by in the inner city of Milwaukee, because that's where I'm from, the north side of Milwaukee. So when I seen the addresses, I'm like, whoa, I've drove by these places. He owned this. This what it
Uh-huh.
consists of. So that's kind of where the button went off. Like maybe I want to get into rental property, because he didn't make that much from his job. When it got to the Schedule E, like I said, he made like $195,000. So
Uh-huh.
after that standpoint, I started binge listening to podcasts every day and just consuming the information that gave me the confidence to pull the trigger.
Okay. So let's talk about pulling the trigger. Like, you talk about the process of purchasing your first property.
Okay, so when I was listening to that, when I got the bug, it was, I believe, like January, February of 2019. I started binge listening to podcasts and then start preparing, like paying off debt, trying to save this, and that. And so that fall, I had planned on not being ready until next June. So I kind of had it pushed off, but then I got a call from the realtor I spoke to, and was like, hey, there's this triplex that's available, that's off market. It's a former client of mine. Would you be interested in seeing it? And I didn't feel ready, but I'm just like, okay, well, let me just go see it. So I go see it, and it's fully occupied. and the numbers weren't bad. So I'm just like, man, maybe I should just pull the trigger. So I did. I got pre-approved. I ended up writing an offer, and that was about November, and I didn't close till January 2nd. But between that time, I almost pulled out the deal 3 different times because I got that inspection report back, and I didn't know how to read one of those, and everything was like bad, quote unquote, because it was an older property. Like the building was built, I think, in 1908. So when they're saying certain things like this problem, I'm assuming it's going to be the worst cost. Like, oh, this is 10,000, that's 10,000. No, I'm out. But I ended up sticking it through. I closed, and then the same day I closed, I had to give new leases and ask for rent to strangers. So that's I got in the game.
Okay, and so an important thing there, I think, hopefully that you guys didn't miss that, was like just the power of starting where you're not ready. Because like if you had never talked to that realtor in the first place, like you would never got that call for the off-market deal. So I think that's the power of one, working with a good realtor who like has connections in the area you're looking at. Because one, the realtor had to know somebody that would tell them about an off-market, or had to know a client that had an off-market deal. And then two, was connecting with somebody that kind of is doing business in the area. So you said you closed in January 2020?
Yep. So yeah,
Okay.
January 2nd, 2020.
Okay, well, awesome. So it's right before the COVID takeoff as far as prices. So you chose to not live in the property, like you stayed in your own property and that became a rental, like all three
No,
units?
no. I had to live in a property because I had a conventional owner occupy load. So I kind of had to. So when I first got the property, I had to kind of get a gauge of who I wanted to essentially kick out because all units were occupied.
Okay.
So my thing was my lease ran out, I believe, in like March or April. So I felt like I had until then to figure out who I wanted to kick out. But the second month, I didn't collect rent from the highest paying tenant, and she didn't answer her phone.
Okay.
So I literally on my job break had the job to drive by there, knock on her door, and be like, "Hey, what's going on? You okay?" And I get to the door, and she's like, "Oh, I'm moving."
Okay, so it just
And
worked
I'm
out.
like, "Huh?" I said, "When you moving?" She's like,
Right now.
"Tomorrow." I'm like, "Huh?" I'm like, "You signed the lease. That you supposed to give me 30 days and this and that." She's like, "Oh, well, family emergency. Where you want me to leave your key?" I'm like, "Oh, well, you can give it to the lady upstairs, I guess." So I'm literally driving back to work like, "Oh, snap." She moved out. What do I got to do? You know what I mean? So the next day I get off of work, I go there. It's pitch black. I'm going inside the I'm yelling out hello because you hear stories of hoarders, of people staying there after they move out. So I'm thinking it might be somebody else in here. So I didn't stay there long, but I literally did the rehab one by one. Like, okay, we need paint. Okay, let's go buy paint. And then me and my lady went to the store, got paint, and was painting for 2-3 weeks, which I'll never do again. But we did that, and it was like, okay, let's get this trash cleaned out. Okay, trash cleaned out. Okay, we need flooring. So we literally did step by step. And by the time we was done, it was like, yo, let's live in here because it was nice. And at the time, between the upstairs, the 2 units upstairs, they was paying $1,300, and my mortgage was $1,270. So when we moved downstairs, we were literally living in there for free.
Okay, awesome. And so you talked about creating new leases for the tenants that were there. So I assumed you like raised the rent prices, and if that is accurate, like how did you determine what like the market rent would be, or that the market rent was too low based on the leases?
Oh, right away? No, sir. I did not raise the rent right away.
Oh, okay. So you
I
just
did
had them
not.
sign new lease, like renew their contract, basically.
They didn't have paperwork.
Oh, okay, got you.
So the previous buyer I bought it from was like a landlord out of DC. I'm in Wisconsin, so he was negligent. He wasn't really owning it like that. So as soon as I closed on the property, I thought I was gonna be able to close on the property and go back to work. I ended up taking off the rest of the day because I had to drive to the lease place and get lease paperwork, get everything together, introduce myself to the tenants, and then have them sign the new leases with the rent that they currently had. Because my whole thing was I didn't have too much money outside of the money I used to purchase the house. So I didn't want to raise rent right away because I needed the rent to kind of sustain the mortgages until I can fix up the property. So I didn't raise the rent till I believe maybe 6-7 months into it. So like that summer, I decided to raise rent once I was more comfortable.
Okay. And so just talking about like rent and general. And so how as a landlord do you decide to raise rent? Because a lot of times people complain to like, oh, landlords are raising the rent, blah, blah, blah. But it's like typically the expenses are going up for the landlord as well. You gotta be at fair market value, etc. But how as a landlord do you decide to actually like, hey, it's time to raise the rent? Like what are the determining factors?
Well, for me, what my mind frame was is okay, I'm living here, right? So it's kind
Mhm,
of different than just saying rent's going up. All right, I'll see you later. You know what I
mhm.
mean? So my whole thing was I wanted to give value before I raise rent. So I fixed some things around the property
Okay.
those first 6 months. And then I went back to him in June. It's like, hey, you've seen I made some changes, I've made some updates. I will continue to do this. However, with me doing this, you will have to pay a higher premium on rent.
Okay. And so how do you keep that boundary between you and the tenants as well? Because you want to be, kind, but not like friendly. Oh, I don't know, maybe you are friends with the tenants, but how do you keep that boundary, that prevents somebody from knocking at your door at 9 at night to tell you a light bulb's out or something that, clearly could wait to the next morning? Like how do you keep those boundaries
Uh,
between the tenants?
Okay, similar to like a job in my leases, I give my tenants my hours, like,
Okay.
Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. If it's anything outside of here that's not a non-emergency, it is a $40 service fee. A lot of times, a tenant is not going to want to pay that $40 for a light bulb, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I believe early in my leases, I kind of set those boundaries as far as what my hours are of contact and what qualifies as an emergency, what's a non-emergency.
Okay, okay, makes a lot of sense. And then so how did you or your lady go about purchasing the next property? Like what was that process and what was the decision or the thought process?
So after I got mine, and we went through all of that, she's like, I want to get my own. So there actually was like a HUD property. I don't know the housing program name, but it was a property that was a FHA that had been sitting, and I think they
Okay,
wanted like 99,000 for a duplex, and they would reimburse you on the cost to fix it up. So they not only had the purchase price, they had the estimated rehab that you would get refunded for after you fix those things that were on their list. And it was small. It was like paint, carpet, and like 3 electrical outlets. So my lady ended up purchasing that one. So they had like $11,000 budget as far as what they were reimbursed us for, but the actual work only costed about 5,700.
okay,
So she did that, and then shortly after that, she got pregnant because we was gonna move into that one. So then once that happened, she just left the unit that she was going to move into. She just had her stuff there, and she just kind of kept it vacant for like the year to satisfy the occupancy thing.
okay,
She went out the downstairs. So that's kind of how that went.
okay. So that's 6 units, and then so how'd y'all go about the duplex, the last 2 units?
No, no, hers was a duplex.
Okay,
So I had a triplex. She purchased a duplex. So then about a year later, because COVID was kind of weird, but after COVID, property values were up.
yeah,
So I got my triplex for about 160, and I think it was worth like 240 a year later. So I ended up taking out what's called a home equity loan against it for
okay,
40,000, and I used that to purchase me a triplex. I mean, a duplex that used to be a triplex, and I converted it back to a triplex.
okay.
So that was I believe that was like June or July the next year.
How'd you go about that conversion?
Um, so I had to put another electric meter, and it was really just like a soundproof wall between units because it was one unit that had 2 kitchens, quote
Okay,
unquote. So I added a kitchen in one of the units, and then I just put a dividing wall between them that's kind of like soundproof. And then I had the We Energies people come and put the electricity meter for the third one. So it ran me probably about 50. So I got the property for 60. Between the third unit and just updating all the units, it probably ran me like 17,000.
okay.
So but now today I almost cash flow like 1,900 on that same
Oh, wow.
property.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So
Awesome. Excuse me. And so how do you go about like screening tenants? I don't know if have you had to place new tenants in these properties yet, or are they still the same? How do you go about
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I got it vacant. So
okay,
that was my whole thing. Like that's kind of what intrigued me about it because not only could I fix it up and charge the rents I want, but I can have a tenant that I screen stay in there. And It's on the north side part of Milwaukee. So the thing is like when you buy in these neighborhoods that people deem dangerous, the first thing they're gonna say is, "What if you get a crazy tenant? What if you get a crazy tenant? What if you get a crazy tenant?" So my whole thing was I need to make sure my screening is in process. I mean,
Mhm.
it's in full effect because I don't want to get somebody that's crazy. So I would say for those 3 units, it probably took me 4 months to get it all the way occupied and the right people in there, just because I got a lot of applications every day, but they didn't meet those requirements. And that's one thing I stress on people, that when you're landlord that have those requirements, because you might think you might have 10 people apply, but what if 100 people apply in a week? How you
Yeah.
gonna be able to, cross eliminate who you gonna keep and who you gonna not keep? You gotta have your requirements established. So that's one thing that I did.
And so, what are some of those requirements you had as far as?
Um, their income to rent. So if your rent is $1,000, how much do you want them to be making? Do they gotta make at least 3,000, 4,000? Credit, where I was, credit wasn't deemed popular. I just didn't want, do you want a high credit score or do you want like no bankruptcies? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Third one is, the background, can they have like no kind of felonies, no kind of evictions, no evictions in the last 5 years, 10 years, how that works. So I'll just say income, credit, and just background. You kind of want to establish those. So when you're reviewing these applications, you can really cross eliminate who you want and who you don't want.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. And how is the Milwaukee real estate market? Because that's a market I don't really hear, but everyone talks about, Dallas, Austin, all those. Like, how is the Milwaukee market? Is it are prices going up? Are rents going up in the market? Like, is it a hot market? Is it cooled down? Kind of
Yeah,
how's the market now and then?
it cash flows like crazy.
Okay.
Crazy. I feel like Milwaukee right now is kind of like how Detroit was in like 2013, 2014.
Okay.
Where it's like nobody's talking about it. You hear about these cheap houses like, yeah, 20,000, 30,000. But it's like, if you know what you're doing, you can make a pretty penny on these houses.
Okay. Thanks. So I guess that's a place to look at is Milwaukee. Okay. And so I know at a certain point, you stepped away from your job and kind of went back. Can you talk about that journey from 9 to 5 to entrepreneur, like back to 9 to 5, and kind of what was the process there? Because like I said,
Okay.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
So one thing that I will admit is sometimes when you in the realm of like trying to scale to get outside of your job, you forget the most important thing that got you there, and that was your job. And for me, that's what it was, bro. So a lot of times, like when I'm getting these properties, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm on socials, I kind of got distracted and kind of just got so consumed with, rentals and doing this and doing that, that it actually affected like my job performance. Like I wasn't as focused, I wasn't as locked in. So February, I believe, February 24th, my job had let me go.
Okay.
And at that point, I think my rental income, it matched like what my overhead would be month in and month out.
Mhm.
Like literally match for match. So I'm like, okay, well maybe I just take the risk and I try this entrepreneur thing out. But looking back in hindsight, I didn't give myself enough time to really have that extra cushion as far as properties, income, and just establishment of just business, because even though, my rentals have matched my expenses, I'm out here trying to network via social media, go live and all that kind of thing. But it's like, I don't think my business model was solid enough, and I don't think I gave it enough time for it to be solid.
Mhm.
And when you add that with the fact that on one.
Thank you for listening to the show. If you want to connect with other listeners and also dive deeper into topics, as well as attend live trainings every Tuesday at 8 p.m., click the link down below and join the First Time Homebuyer School. See you inside.
Of my triplexes, I ended up fixing up and thinking I was going to sell. So
Okay.
in about, I believe, May, my first triplex, I was going to fix up and sell. So I put about 10 to 15,000 into it. But I ran into a problem where I had a distressed tenant in a lower unit.
Okay.
In my nicest unit, the unit that I fixed up, that our house had, that I lived in. And when I went through that, I realized like, yo, I can't sell this place, because if I do, I'm going to take a lower number, which would mean me letting go an asset for a lower number, which is something you never want to do. or B, I probably won't be able to sell it because between the damage she done to the unit, which she'll be out in December, between the damage she done to the unit and just everything that was going on, there was no way an investor was going to come in and want to buy it. So then my second thought was, dang, well, maybe I could take out an equity loan against it because I do have a lot of equity in it, but I didn't have, because of my DTI between, you know, my expenses for my rental properties that was listed on my credit report, I wouldn't be able to get an equity loan because I didn't have a W-2 job, which once I realized that, I'm like, if I gotta go back to work, I go back to work. So I just put my pride to the side and went back to work, bro.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you pointed out because two things. There's one, I think, like I always hear folks online talk about, hey, I pulled $40,000, $50,000 out of the property, and they make it seem like you just go to the bank and pull the money out. It's like, no, it's a loan. Like everyone leaves out the fact that like when you're pulling money out of property, it's a loan. So that you have to prove you can pay it back to the bank. They're not just giving you, money out of the property due to equity. And like, so yeah, that 9 to 5 helps because banks, lenders they want to see some sort of income, and W-2 is the easy income to prove. You can literally start a job. You can have not even started a job and just show like an acceptance letter in some situations, and they'll count your income. We said it like a distressed tenant. What did you mean by that? Was somebody was just like wilding in the place, or?
Yeah, she was going through a domestic thing with her husband. He moved out, and then she had a period where she was kind of doing some, odd things, and she's one of those tenants that knows the system as far as because she was a Renaissance tenant, but they're gonna play the system to the fullest capacity. And that's a situation where I kind of got played in the situation. I can go into the detail if you would like me to, because I don't have no shame.
Every detail.
Okay. Yeah. So she's a Renaissance tenant. I had the unit listed for $1,100. She had a voucher for $825, but she told me that, hey, I will sign a separate lease for $1,100 and I will pay the difference of $275 a month, which is, the difference between $825 and $1,100. So for the first 5 or 6 months, she was doing that. And then she went through this thing with her husband, this domestic thing. And then she was kind of being very loud and obnoxious to tenants upstairs that I was getting calls about at 1 in the morning. I never get calls at 1 in the morning, but this is the only time I got a call at 1 in the morning. This is while I'm full-time entrepreneur. So all that is going on. And then, the following month, I'm like, hey, where's the 275 to make it, 1,100? And then she hit me with I'm doing everything by the book, take it up with the rent assistance department, this, and that. So she literally did that to short me, and there was nothing I could do about it because the official paperwork is at $825.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So it's like between that going on with the unit, I can't sell it because, like I said, she would personally sabotage, the showing. And I know anybody going on the showing, they're going to ask, well, how long is the tenant going to be there, right? And to know they're going to be there for 6 more months when you buy the property and they already distressed, it's like, I'm about to get him a lower offer. So then listed on the market, I have to play the long game. I'm like, well, if I give in to what's going on now, I'm going to let the asset go for cheaper, or I can go back to work, give it some time, give it time for her to get out of there, fix that unit up, and then go back to the drawing board. So that's ultimately what I decided to do based on her, kind of sabotaging it a little bit, but it happens.
Okay, thank you. And so one important thing I think you pointed out, I don't know if that may have gone over, like kind of folks hit a little bit, is that like whenever you're purchasing a occupied property or a rental property, is that you have to actually verify like what is actually being paid in rent. So just because someone tells you, hey, I'm collecting $1,100 in rent, like you need to actually see them actually collecting it like in real life. Because like I said, anything can be on paper, but like if they're only collecting $875, or maybe they're just collecting nothing because the landlord or the tenant hasn't paid, like you need to know that. So just don't ever just take anyone's word as far as what the tenants are paying. So that's kind of why, if you guys didn't pick it up, why it was going to be an issue, or why the person would even know what was being paid on rent in that property. And so you mentioned you're an accountant. Can you talk about some like maybe the tax benefits as far as like real estate, like depreciation and all that technical stuff?
It's so many tax benefits. So And what I mean by tax benefit is the income you make from your rental property, you're able to offset it by these benefits. So one example is depreciation. So, in layman's terms, if you bought a car today that you bought for 10,000 and it had a 5-year useful life, that means every year you will be able to write off $2,000. It was the same thing for a house, except for I believe it's over 39 and a half years. So you get to write that down. Two, mortgage interest. So when you pay your mortgage, you have a percentage that's principal and you have a percentage that's mortgage interest. Well, in the beginning, I think about like 95% of those first 24 payments, those first 2 years worth of payments are interest. So essentially, almost 95% of your mortgage you're able to write off. And that's not even talking about repairs, capital expenditures. So when you have a rental property, there's a endless amount of things that you can do to kind of decrease your tax liability legally, more importantly.
Actually, can you talk about what a write-off actually is? I see so much bogus information where folks are like, I buy a car and just write it off, and it's just like somehow it's free.
No, it's
Like,
okay.
what's an actual write-off?
A write-off is just essentially something that is decreasing your tax liability. So
Okay.
if you had $10,000 in rental income and you had depreciation of $2,000, that $2,000 would decrease your taxable income from 10,000 to 8,000. Now you add in mortgage interest, that was 2,000. Now you at 6,000. So as opposed to being taxed at $10,000, you're gonna be taxed at $6,000.
If you enjoy the show and want to go even more in depth with the content we put out, go to houserichshow.com. We have courses on insider secrets your lender and realtor don't tell you, a course on house hacking, and even a DIY credit course so you'll never have to pay for credit repair again. And since you're a loyal listener, use promo code POD for a special discount. Back to the show. Thanks. So kind of what's the end game? So is it to build up the rental portfolio? Is it to take the accounting business and maybe expand that on your own as far as a side hustle or a business? Kind of what's the end game? Yeah.
I don't necessarily say if I have an end game or like goal as far as like retiring. I just know I want to build both up. So I want to continue to get better at being an accountant, tax paperwork, just kind of knowing over the tax codes because I actually use some of that stuff on my own. Same thing with the rentals. I want to just continue to keep building and buying and just adding cash flow to that portfolio, adding equity to that portfolio, and just keep building as I go. I don't think sometimes I feel like when you have an end game, it kind of stops you from really taking it to the next level because you're so short-term thinking to just get into that goal, which I was a victim of. So for me now, it's just like, let's just build it up, live life as it goes by. And when you get to a point where it's like, there's no point in working, then I'll do it. But who knows when that'll happen.
Gotcha. Thank you. And so you talk about, you have the 9 to 5 CEO podcast. You talk about the podcast and then talk about the podcast and what folks can kind of gather from tuning in.
Okay. Yeah. So shout out to Zena. I co-hosted with Zena Dixon Inc. We had did a live together and it was a cool live. We kind of had like a good, connection. So I kind of reached out to her and asked her the idea, but conceptually how it came about is, I'm a podcast junkie. Like that's all I do is listen to podcasts during the day.
All right.
So one thing I was noticing, bro, is you listen to these podcasts and people be like, I had a job, I was in real estate, and now I'm retired.
Yeah.
And they never really gave a story of what was it like doing both. Like, what was it like having a job and having that first property? How was it like having that job and having that second property? What was it like when work got demanded and your side business got demanded? So I started the podcast with Zena to kind of tell that story. So when people listen that might have had future ambitions to want to do it, they actually knew, okay, this is what actually comes with it, as opposed to just hearing somebody saying, I'm retired now in 8 months.
Yeah, because that's how all stories start. It's like, I left my 6-figure job to start this, and it's like, no, I got 30 units. Like, what? There were some steps in between there. But it seems like everybody that quits their job had a 6-figure job. Like, no one ever's like, I made $80,000 and I left my job. It's always 6-figure. And then I left my 6-figure job to start this. Like, okay.
I'm not even at 6 figures in my job yet. So it's like I got some stuff to do. That's why you ask me. I'm like, bro, I gotta build my job up too. Like, why not have 6-figure job income and 6-figure rental portfolio?
Most definitely. And then, so what can folks get out of your 9 to 5 landlord course?
It's real, it's organic, and it's based off my experiences. So it's literally things I've came up with on along the ways of being a landlord. So, I talk about, just the simplest things. Okay, keep a lockbox on your properties with key access to all units. So, in the winter, when something goes out or a tenant something needs to be fixed, but they go to work during the day, you don't have to drive there to let in the plumber. You can just get a plumber the lockbox key. He can fix it. And you can do this all from your phone. I talk about, how to collect rent without having to be there. It's like, if you don't want tenants to have your address, get you a lockbox. It only costs $5. Get in a lockbox address where they can mail the checks, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle. So it's just it's just processes and procedures I use that allow me to focus on my 9 to 5 while also being a landlord. But I kind of really break it down now.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question. By the way, that links for that stuff will be in the description to this podcast or YouTube. And so, last question. And so, if you had $1 million and you had to spend it all in 1 week on real estate or real estate related stuff, what would you use it for?
I'll probably buy a portfolio of cash flowing properties in Milwaukee.
All right. There you go. And just one more time, where can folks find you at?
You can find me on Instagram at the 925, the number 9 TO5 landlord 414. So you can find me there. You can follow the podcast page at official 925 CEO podcast. And just hit me up, man. I'm a human being, so if you say something, you talking sense, I definitely respond.
All right. Appreciate the knowledge. Appreciate the story and going into the detail. Kind of like you said, it's not like it's podcast. It's not like you just have a job and you somehow all of a sudden you got 30 units. There's a process in between there, and sometimes it's ups and downs in the process. So if you listen this far, I appreciate y'all. Subscribe to the YouTube, leave a review. It really helps the podcast. And tell a friend to tell a friend. And as always, buy land. Rumor has it they're not making any more. Thanks.